for those who don't know, Carvel is a Kubernetes toolkit. It facilitates a deployment flow. So we have tools that are really based on trying to embrace Unix philosophy that really focus on individual tasks. And so, I've been mostly building up with the team these tools and trying to improve various kind of abstractions that we offer to the users. But I think a little bit down the line, we'll probably talk a little bit more detail on some of these things.
What's up, Zudong? I'm sorry, what's up, Lubron? And Lubron's from my team over on the TKG networking side. So yeah, definitely. We do have a calendar invite. So for folks that are interested, reach out to me on Slack and I'll send you the calendar invite so that you can always remember to come hang out with us. So we can update the YouTube stuff for sure, Lubron. So so Carvel features these six. What is it? You have more than 6 different tools, right? Or is it just these core 6? We
currently highlight only this, but there's definitely a few up and coming tools that we've been growing. So we'll probably be changing some of the website layout and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah, but these are the major ones.
All right. So I wanted to sort of so today we've done the last 4 episodes have been real focused on Antrea, and you're welcome, Lubron. Lubron said thank you. He's such a gentleman. So we've done a few episodes on some Antrea internals and played around with Tanzu framework and VMware Tanzu, run Antrea on TKG before, but mostly on kind. I want to show some folks how Antrea runs on Tanzu today, a little bit more of it, and sort of work our way in there by looking at how we deal with CNI lifecycle inside Tanzu framework. So something that's relevant to a lot of folks is the API removals in 122. So anyone there? I see there's a few people watching. I think 3. It says 6 people watching right now. 3. I don't know. Yeah, it said 3 and then it said 6. So I don't know. But if folks have run in anything with the API removals, let us know. It would be interesting to talk about some drama folks have seen. What's up, Zach? Yes, sir. How you doing? One of the problems that Carvel manages for us is sort of package management and upgrades and all that stuff using Kapp Controller, which is sort of, I don't know. John once mentioned to me, Dimitri, it's like almost like sort of an orchestrator for all of Kapp. Is that are we allowed to say that, or we're not supposed to say that? I feel like it makes a lot of sense when people say that.
Depends, I guess, what comes after that. But it is in the name. Kapp Controller is definitely built upon these other tools, and one tool being a primary deployer being Kapp. So I guess that's kind of fair.
So for folks that have never used any of these before, it's like YTT allows you to do all this YAML substitution. And we went over that in the last one, how we use YTT overlays to manage the complexity of the different types of Antrea configurations you have. But Kapp allows you to define applications, and then you can sort of get a canned operator by combining Kapp and Kapp Controller sort of. You can do a lot more than that with them. And then image package allows you to build images, and kbuild gives you sort of a declarative way to do production grade builds that are reproducible and so on and so forth. So all these things play together. But in Tanzu, we recently ran into an issue where, not actually with Antrea, but it was with Calico. We had a regression because the Tejera Calico itself uses some of the older, the older version of Calico that we had, which was 3.11 or something like that, was using some of these old APIs, and then we upgraded to 122. And so there's an interesting PR that just came out that gets us really talking about package management and how important it is for Kubernetes, where what we found out we needed to do in order to upgrade Calico properly was in TKG is actually change the way that we manage add-ons in TKG. So this PR just came out, and it was, who was it that did this? Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng was doing it. Look at this. What do you think about that? How do you like this cat, Dimitri?
Well, it's doing a lot more exercise than I do.
What is it?
I gotta catch up with the cat.
That cat's working hard. That cat is working hard on Thanksgiving weekend. Okay, so here we go. So this PR by Lu Cheng, he's distracting me with his cat, but I wanted to show you something else. This one is so this is what this is doing is it's making it so that you have a version of, maybe I can open up, let's open up the Miro board, right? And let's go over to, yeah, actually this is the Antrea live board, right? So
before you dive deep, we gotta address this though. What's the pronunciation for this? I always keep on hearing Miro. From you, I hear Miro.
Miro.
What?
I got my meme, Scott. I call it Miro.
Is that the new pronunciation trend there? Should I be switching to?
Do you call it Miro?
Yep.
All right. If you all want to leave in the comments how you pronounce, Dimitri would really appreciate it. That would make him very happy. So, you've got say a 1.21 cluster, okay? And then you've got a 1.22 cluster over here, right? So this is the problem we recently had, right? Is, we had nodes, and, feel free to interrupt me, Dimitri, if there's things that y'all think about or are building that address these types of situations. Feel free to sort of take this conversation in a different direction as we go through these things. But so I've got this node and it's running a 121 kubelet, right? It's running a 121 kubelet. And then that same node is going to come back up and it's going to be running a 122 kubelet, right? And, as I go from here to here, things are going to break, right? So in this case, I was saying, with Calico, you've got Calico 311 here, right? And this runs just fine. But when you upgrade this node, you're going to want to be running, you're going to have, if you have this 311 running, when you upgrade this node, nothing's going to work, right? And so in TKG, right? So in TKG, we have to orchestrate this upgrade. We have to upgrade all these packages, including you've got Calico, right? You've got Antrea, right? Well, you're not going to have both, but you'll have one or the other, right? You've got all the core Kubernetes components, right? You've got the scheduler, you've got the API server, you've got the controller manager, right? You've got all those things. You've got your CSI providers, right? You've got a whole bunch of you've got all these different containers that you're running. We'll see them all in a little bit. I've got them on another screen over here. Actually, I could just share it really quickly. But these are all the different CRDs that you're running, and that's really small. I'm going to make it bigger in a little bit. But you've got, in a production cluster, you've just got tons of apps you're running, right? Just to keep it going. And Myro says, let's see, everybody else is mirror. Myro. Scott says it's Myro. Myro. So when you upgrade, right, what you want to do is you want to, the way to solve this problem so that you're not running 311 in the new cluster, because you don't want this to be broken, right? What you do is you upgrade to say in our case, we're upgrading Calico to 319 here. And Calico 319 has a dependency on 122, right? So what we do is we'll upgrade the CNI in place and then upgrade the node, right? And then when this node comes alive, you've got a temporary period where you have your CNIs running an old version, where your CNI is running a new version that's not compatible with the current version of the Kubernetes API. So you upgrade all the components on that node, and then you upgrade the Kubernetes version like afterwards. And so
It's kind of interesting. So I'm definitely not really familiar with the land of CNIs and different capabilities there. But what is interesting to me is it sounds like you're also, so there is a contract obviously with the control plane, right? The Kubernetes version X, right? But
Yeah.
there's also the contract with the kubelet, from what I understand you're explaining, right?
So
And
there's a CNI contract, but the CNI interface doesn't change much, right? So there is. So let's pull that up. I don't know if we have any. I don't know if Jungen's here because he CNI. I meant to get the CNI, right? So the CNI is stable, right? So like if we go here, right? You know, and they are designing 1.2 or they are designing the 2.0 API and so on and so forth. But like it's stable and it's not changing a lot. And there's only 3 real things. There's add, check, and delete. Right? So like when you make a pod, container D, right? Container D, so like when I make a pod, I have the kubelet. And then the kubelet is going to then over a socket talk to the CRI, right? Talk to container D. And then container D is going to talk to my CNI provider, right? And it's going to say like, you know, okay, add, right? Or delete, right? Or whatever. And it's really going to be only doing one of these 3 things, right? So that API is very stable and it'll send it like a blob of JSON along the way. And maybe you might have one new field or something that isn't there or is there. But like for the most part, it's stable. It's a good question though, because like, for example, the reason it's an interesting question is like we're going to have to deal with this if we get to CNI 2.0, right? We're going to have some other problem.
yeah, so I guess, you know, with what seems like what Lu Chang then was trying to solve is not really well, I mean, I guess, yeah, so I would imagine, yeah, so if we consider the CNI interface stable, and let's ignore for a second that it may change in future, right? Then really, I'm guessing then what the things that are running on each kubelet also talk to the control plane, and that's what pisses them off if the control plane gets upgraded.
Yeah, because because if the control plane, by control plane you mean like the API server, really, right?
That's right.
Like,
yep.
Yeah, like the API server is getting upgraded, and then all of this Calico CRDs or all the Antrea CRDs, whatever your thing is, that's like the API for CRD itself like changed, right? So like one of the interesting.
But I would imagine then the, you know, a project like Calico or Antrea would have that backwards comparability guarantees with the I don't know, with whatever the API that's being served by the API server, right?
I mean, I'm sure for some period of time it may have. The thing is, we upgraded from 3.11 to 3.19, so we did a huge upgrade of Calico, right? It wasn't like we weren't doing a very good job, admittedly, of keeping up to date with the latest Calico, right? So if there was a bridge in place to manage that, it's like, you know, it's like we weren't really tracking that well. But a lot of people had that sort of same issue. Like,
yeah, because what's interesting about this is then, you know, imagine if you jump far enough, right, where the version of a, let's say, Calico that you're trying to install on your existing cluster is just, it doesn't support the existing cluster, right?
yeah.
So I think this becomes a problem of really how far can you jump, because you need that window of backwards comparability, right? To, you know, to, I guess, shift between the versions.
Yeah. Yeah, you need that, and you need some weird glue logic. And so this PR, the main thing it did is it changed. It's a good way to learn about framework is to study this PR, because it changed it added this function, upgrade add-ons post node upgrade, right? And it's pretty easy to walk through this, right? So this is a new function, and then in this function we start to get into the stuff that I wanted to talk about with respect to Carvel, right? Which is we have these, you know, these standard package repositories that are sort of becoming a thing more and more in TKG, right? And these things then are associated with add-ons, and we have a downstream way of managing the add-ons, and we have these upstream add-ons, and there's a controller that sort of manages all of this, all of these add-ons, and then ultimately, like this PR like makes it so that we do this, we upgrade this container, we upgrade this add-on, and then after we upgrade this add-on, then we add the nodes. It's like a 1 and then a 2. And it used to be the other way around. It used to be first upgrade the node, and now your node is totally broken because it's using a new version of Kubernetes and an old version of this add-on. And so now your node is broken, and then it's like hard to do an upgrade when you have a broken node because nothing's working anymore, right? So that was a cool one. And so that gets us into this whole thing of package management, right? So now we jump over here, and we can start talking more about Carvel, which is really why Dimitri's here today, right? Dimitri's the Carvel dude.
That's not the only reason why I'm here. I was also very much interested in the Myro pronunciation question. If anything, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, well, like you came for Carvel and you stayed for Myro. So we're gonna get into this package management. So y'all recently built all this package stuff, right? You built a package repository, you built PackageMetadata package, PackageInstall. This is huge for us on the TKG side because, well, on the Antrea side, we're thinking about making a forward-facing sort of networking focused Tanzu package repository, so that people running Tanzu that want to run like the bleeding edge version of Antrea and a bunch of other bleeding edge stuff, whatever we might decide that stuff is, can just run it. We're not even sure what that looks like yet. It's just an idea. But tell us about how this package repository idea evolved. Because I was looking in the blog and it was like, you had a blog where you're saying we finally decided to build a package management solution. So I'm assuming that for a while you debated that and you're like, no, we don't want to be another package manager. And then you changed your mind and you decided you wanted to be one. And I know that some folks asked me beforehand, wanted me to talk to you about the difference between the Carvel package management philosophy and how you manage packages in Helm, and how you've gone about it in a different way. So I'm going to switch to this computer. And as I switch, why don't you just start talking us through these things?
Well, since you did ask a question, maybe a more historical question, how did we end up with the package management layer? I'll start off by saying that we have, when Carvel was a baby, it really started off with a fewer number of tools, right? I think we started off actually with one, and out of one, we split out, 2. So in the beginning, let's say there was YTT and Kapp, right? And you already mentioned that YTT is really about templating and overlaying. Well, more specifically, the idea behind YTT was you really want to be working with the data structures, and you don't want to be working with text templating, right? Because there's so many things that you could actually be doing with the data structures and not having to worry about, I don't know, silly situations like quotes and things like that. And you could actually start writing functions that return data structures and being able to serialize them and whatnot. So that YTT really came out of those ideas, right? And so as part of the Kubernetes deployment flow, you end up with you got some configuration and you want to take that configuration to the cluster. Now kubectl is perfectly fine, but once you kind of start using kubectl and Anger and actually try to productionize it, you really start questioning, why isn't there a concept of an application? That's at least what we call it, right? A collection of resources, right? And so Kapp really has turned to be that tool that manages resources in bulk and converges them, right? So over time, as you delete resources, as you add resources, as you update them, as you tweak them, right? We want to be able to be absolutely certain that the cluster is converged to that particular state. And so that was kind of the beginnings of Carvel, right? We have these two tools that, can be piped together, right? For example, YTT actually has no idea what Kubernetes is, and Kapp is obviously very much Kubernetes centric, right? And so bringing that, building on on the Unix philosophy, right? We were able to separate those two responsibilities into two distinct tools. Now, a lot of the OSS users of Carvel, right? They're really, one of the benefits of having the smaller, sharper tools that do a particular thing is that you get to help users with different flows, right? So some users may be deploying their own applications that they have built in-house. Some users might be taking somebody else's applications, whether it be, some plain YAML, or maybe it's some kind of Helm templating, or maybe it's some JSONet or something like that, right? And tweaking it maybe, and maybe taking advantage of YTT to overlay some changes, and then maybe, take advantage of Kapp, right? And so you really end up with this case where some users will take advantage of variety of Carvel tools. Some users will take advantage of only a few tools that they really, have a problem for. And that was really the origins and really the and really the kind of the starting point. I do see there's a question here. What's the difference between Kapp and Helm? Well, you can think of Helm as it's a tool that does lots of kind of phases, right? So a phase of templating, a phase of bringing the templates and packaging them up, right? A phase of deploying, maybe a phase of configuring those templates, right? Versus our approach, we think it's much more flexible to actually split up each one of those phases and tackle them with different tools, right? So Kapp specifically, it just focuses on deployment. It doesn't know how to template anything. It doesn't know how to package anything. All it knows how to do is take a YAML and apply it to the cluster, right? And so, that's ultimately the difference that I'm trying to highlight. So as I was saying, we have started where we have these smaller, sharper tools that solve very particular problems, but we also have realized that, well, it's nice to take advantage of these tools as CLIs, but it's also nice to have a controller for it, right? And so that's where the Kapp Controller came from, where it's able to actually take the same tools that somebody would use locally or maybe in their CI flow, and run those same tools as a deployment workflow as part of a controller. And ultimately, that's what turned into APIServer provided by the Kapp Controller. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess here's an example of an APIServer. Skipping all the boring metadata sections. If you jump to like spec, so here we have. So APIServer really gets split into this 3 sections that we think are the right ways of kind of separating the responsibilities. There is a first section is actually fetch. So in this YAML, it's not really sorted. Well, it's sorted based on the names, but we typically write out our YAMLs in a slightly different order. But the idea is that you first fetch something, right? And that could be some configuration. Then you make some changes to it or template it, insert some values, maybe, I don't know, change some stuff. And so that's the template section. And then finally, the last section is actually deploy. And if you notice here, under each one of those sections, we're actually taking advantage of those well-known tools out there, right? Some of them obviously from Carvel, because we want to be able to take advantage of our own tools. But we also, for example, integrate with Helm template, or for example, SOPs for decrypting and for decrypting the values that you might be fetching and things like that. So the idea here is that the common flows that users typically run into, you should be able to codify in this unified interface, and that's what APIServer is to us. So I'll pause over here maybe for a second. I don't know if anybody got any questions, or I should revisit any of the explanations so far. I was trying to find this. I had the slide somewhere that was showing this layering that I'm talking about. Because ultimately, all we're doing here is just we're layering. You know, we start out with the lower level CLI tools that somebody can take advantage of, and then we're building up the layers on top of that. Actually, here's a slide that you know how to. Let me send the picture to you. Let me see how I can do that. How can I send the picture? Well, maybe I can't.
I switched because my audio wasn't working. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear now.
Wait, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I switched over to when I added this other computer. The other thing wasn't working. I wasn't trying to leave you hanging there, but okay. So section 0 you fetch. Section 1 is where you template it. This integrates with Helm, right?
Yes. So in templating, as one of the templating providers, you can use Helm template, right? So you can, for example, mix and match things, right? You could fetch your Helm chart from Git, and then you can Helm template it, and then you can maybe even pass it through ITT to apply some overlays, and then maybe you can even pass it through kbuild to turn all the image references into digests, and then finally you can deploy with Kapp. Or you could actually be fetching a Helm chart directly instead of fetching it from Git or something like that.
So I could fetch a Helm chart, and then could I use Helm's DSL to transform it?
When you say Helm's DSL, do you mean like Helm template command?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the, if you go to the carvel.dev/Kapp Controller, there is a there is a page that says app spec detail thing or something. I forget what the title is, and it actually showcases all the all the possible configurations.
Okay, cool. So
trying to yeah,
go on with what you were saying, and then I'm gonna.
Now I was about to say I'm trying to paste the picture in a Carvel Slack chat, but apparently I suck at pasting pictures.
Let me see here. I can.
Where it went. All right. Well, I'll just drop it off over here. So let me see.
Vivek says, I assume each app handled by Kapp will have its own base template.
Yes, it could, or it could share things in TAD. I mean, so it's really up to you what you end up fetching, right? We have folks who are fetching, for example, from a shared Git repository and maybe applying their own data values, or maybe, they decide to fetch from their own entirely separate Git repository, or maybe it's fetching what we call image package bundles. So we try to not limit you in any way.
I wanted to get into that. So if I go into here and I do kubectl get crd, right, and I look at all the stuff that's Carvel in here, right? Okay, I've got internal packages.packaging, carvel.dev, PackageInstalls. Then I've got the secret stuff. I really wanted to talk about PackageRepositories, but I figured since we're on a live cluster, it might be interesting if you wanted to just sort of bounce around, and if any of these, anything interesting that you wanted to.
So if you don't mind bringing up real quick a picture that I pasted in Carvel open source Slack.
Yeah.
In Kubernetes.
Let me see here. Yeah, I can do that.
I'm a visual person, and hopefully this picture will help us identify where we are.
Yeah. Let me log in on this computer. Oh God, it's asking me if I'm a robot. Let me see here. There we go. Here we go. Somehow I was able to get in. Okay, cool. Carvel. Cool. So if y'all want to learn more about Carvel, there's Carvel on slack.k8s.io. So, okay, here we go.
Oh, yeah, we're very friendly. Feel free to join, ask us questions. And
oh my, y'all are so nice.
We try to be.
I ask the stupidest questions on there all the time. Okay, here we go. And
perfect. Yeah.
Somebody
so
always helps me. Yeah.
As I was saying, we have, we're all about picking the right abstractions for the problem that you have. And so if you just zoom out for a second over here, so I know you want to get to package install and packages, but right below the package install and packages, there is a thing called AppCR. That's what we've been just talking about. So AppCR has been there in Kapp Controller since the beginning, and that's ultimately one of the core things that actually implements the actual package install mechanics underneath the package install, right? So similar how deployment creates pods, package installs, they create apps. Mm-hmm. And so that's ultimately why I'm trying to highlight the app, is that you'll see that there's a very direct relationship between the package install and an app.
Yeah, so when you say they create apps, it's not so much that they create it, it's that they reconcile them, as it says here, right? So,
well, package install will create an AppCR instance by the same name. So if you actually take a look at your cluster right now, and you do kubectl get app -a, big A, yep. So you'll see actually there is I don't know how many of them, 10 here.
Yeah.
There's 10 apps over here, and
so
these
you're good at counting lines with your eyes.
Just a rough estimate. Is it 10? I don't know. Yeah, I guess it is 10. Lots of what do you call it? WC-L.
Lots of, okay. So yeah, these are all apps. Now, when you say create an app by the same name, what exactly did you mean?
So yeah, so if you do kubectl get PKGI, which is short for package install, you'll actually see that it's exactly the same view throw in -a. Yeah. You might have to zoom out just a little bit.
I zoomed in because you were complaining about it.
I know. I'm old, but
it's your fault. Okay.
So yeah, so
you know who else was Zach was complaining about it, because I always make the font too small. Here we go.
That's true. Well, you probably have a great eyesight. I don't got that.
Okay. Here we go. Let me see. All right, there we go.
But the point that I was trying to make here, right, is that if you see the kubectl get app and kubectl get PackageI, it shows you effectively one-to-one mapping there, right? For every single package install, there is going to be an AppCR created. And AppCR is actually the thing that does all the heavy lifting. So package install doesn't actually do anything really.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. And there's actually, due to this layering, right, users of Kapp Controller, for example, they could be using AppCR to deploy their own applications, but also at the same time, they could be using PackageInstall to consume, let's say, distributed software created by somebody else, right? But it ultimately, in both cases, boils down to having an AppCR that gets added to the cluster, which, has a benefit same as, deployment to pods. You have that singular layer.
So if I do kubectl, so let's split screen. Oh, what did I do? Jesus. If I kubectl get crd grep -i. So this is a package install.
That's right.
Okay, so I make a package install. So there's a thing then, kubectl get pods -a, that's reconciling the package install, and that's Kapp Controller that's doing that, or is it something else?
That's right. Yeah. So Kapp Controller, for every single layer from that picture that we had, it introduces effectively new types of CRs.
Okay.
So the green layer, AppCR, the yellow layer, package install and package CR. Package repository is yet another layer on top.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay. So let me do this. Yeah. Okay. So I've got a package install. It's reconciling an app, and then that's all done by Kapp Controller.
That's right. Yep.
What else does Kapp Controller reconcile as far as the CRDs in here?
That's pretty much it at the green layer and the yellow layer. We do have a concept of a package repository. Now, there's actually one interesting note here to make. We have not implemented everything as CRDs. We have implemented PackageInstall and PackageRepository as CRD, and obviously AppCR. But the package and package metadata, they're not actually CRDs. They're served by a custom API server. So you won't find actually a package CRD in the cluster.
One quick question. When I look for app, how come it's not a carvel.dev package?
It's been out there for 2 years before the rename and everything.
Okay.
So we felt it wasn't worth doing the larger rename, and we may eventually do some renaming and support both. We're kind of sticklers for backwards compatibility, so it's a it's a very cautious game that we would play.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. So, just I was just wondering. Okay. So back to what you were saying. So,
yeah, so the package CR is actually not really based on a CRD. It's driven by the API server that Kapp Controller brings. So if you do kubectl get pkg, which is short for package, these things, they're actually not real, they're not using a package CRD.
They're not CRDs. These are you're extending the API server.
That's right. Yeah.
And then when I say kubectl get package, what is the API server is then seeing that I'm trying to get a package object and then proxying that over to your API server extension.
That's right. Which sits inside the same process of Kapp Controller.
Yeah. I mean, Antrea does that too, right? So Antrea does that for network policies.
You're right. Yeah. We actually did copy a few chunks of code from Antrea to make our setup bootstrapping
easier. You copy-pasted Antrea to build this. That's cool.
Copy-pasting is the king.
That's all I ever do. Okay. So you borrowed their API server idea, and then that's how you implemented the underlying PKG thing. And so how come you didn't make a package of first class API extension via custom resources?
Well, it is a first class in a sense that it's a first class API, right? So from a consumer of Kubernetes APIs, you don't know the difference, right? One of the reasons why we went with this approach is actually maybe a little bit of a future looking reason, is that we don't necessarily want to store all packages, which, over time you may actually have quite a bit of them. You don't necessarily want to store them in etcd. Now, right now we do have a naive implementation of this, so we do actually store it in etcd. But one could imagine decoupling that, right? And because the API is served by the API server, it's not something that, it's not something that the clients wouldn't have to change, right? They would be oblivious to the actual internal implementation of where this is stored.
Okay, so it's less moving parts for the future.
Exactly, that's at least the thinking. But like I said, today we still use this is why actually you saw there's two CRs called internal package and internal package metadata. Each one of those things is actually creating a CR underneath as a cheap way to implement the storage for now.
That's what those are.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I was going to ask you. Okay, cool. So the internal packages and the internal package metadatas, if I go and I say kubectl get internal packages,
you're probably going to see some scary looking things.
Ooh, what is this?
These are, I believe, base 64 encoded names. I forget exactly what, or base 36 encoded or something like that, because we didn't want anybody trying to depend on these kind of things. You may want to do base 32 or, I forget what we use.
Who wants to tell me what this string is? Antrea trivia. I promised everybody we do Antrea trivia today for t-shirts. Okay. So whoever can answer this question, okay, whoever can answer this question gets a free t-shirt. Okay.
So yeah, so where I was going with this, right? So one of the requirements that we felt is important to fulfill is being able to discover the package metadata via the standard Kubernetes APIs, right? Because you're using Kubernetes API for the rest of the interaction with your control plane, right? And so it didn't really make sense to try to move that API elsewhere. So we felt this was a good experience to offer. Now, package is something that you can add to the API, to the Kubernetes cluster directly, right? So, for example, you don't have to use a higher level primitive of PackageRepository to add multiple packages. You could actually just do kubectl apply some package CR, right?
Okay.
But that really is there for folks who might be, maybe they're iterating on a package CR, and so they, of course, they don't want to be creating package repositories every time they iterate. Or maybe there is some other cases of where you actually want to be in control of package CRs more directly versus trying to group them as a package repository.
If you edit these, it works the same. Does it work the same?
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
All APIs should be the same.
So if I wait,
you'll have to throw in PKG in there somewhere.
So here's my Antrea trivia question for today. So for folks that want a free T-shirt, when you install Antrea, it's going to be easy because it's the first time, okay? So when you install Antrea, what does you have to tell me one thing that the Antrea agent does before it can come online and begin assigning IP addresses to new pods. Okay, there's a few steps. There's a few things that the Antrea agent does when it comes online. If anybody can just tell me one of them, just put it in the chat. You get a free T-shirt. And Susan's going to mail you that T-shirt no matter where you are. Even if you're in Australia, she's going to mail you a T-shirt. She's going to mail the T-shirt to Australia. Okay. So anyways, go on, Dimitri.
Oh, no, that's all I was really saying here with the package CRs, right? Is that, they're no different than other resources, right? So, if you, for whatever reason, need to create package CRs yourself, right? And manage them maybe with Kapp deploy directly or whatever else, right? You totally can, right? And this again goes back to the layering principles here.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I can edit this and the object. Yeah. So do people think a lot about this? Like, is this something that people worry a lot about? Like, if I was to Google for building operator versus APIServer extension, like, is this some big, like, if I go on Reddit, do people fight about this a lot? Do you fight about it with the people that work on Carvel? Was this a big argument? Like,
you mean using the custom API server versus a CRD?
Yeah, like, is there a canonical guide for people that want to do this, like that, where they can decide like when they should do one versus the other?
There is a library, right, that you can fairly easily import into your code, and I think you just have to implement some interfaces. Now, the question, of course, ends up to be like, where do you actually want to store things? And CRDs do quite a bit for you, right? So there's got to be a really compelling reason of why you would want to leave what the CRD mechanism provides and go, the custom way. But there's definitely compelling reasons for, maybe lower level projects, right? So for example, metrics server, as far as I recall, also uses an API server, right? And I imagine that's probably, similarly thought about is you don't want to be polluting etcd with lots of things. I don't know anything about actually metrics server, so don't quote me on that, but I think that's what was happening there as well.
Is there some issue of state, like statelessness versus how stateful you want your, I guess.
I mean, yeah, you can definitely throw in the stateful versus stateless argument in there. So there's actually an interesting question here is like, do we need to persist package CRs anywhere versus just have them be ephemeral, and the next time the package repository or whatever else reconciles, then it will re-download them, and here they are kept in memory or on disk or something like that.
Yeah, because it just could be a config map when you create the thing, right? Like,
well, config map would still end up in etcd, but you just imagine keeping it on disk within the pod, right? If the pod goes away, your packages disappear, but once the pod, let's say, comes back up, then they're back, right?
Oh, so you would have but you need the package stuff.
So, there you go. So Scott actually is confirming what I was saying earlier. Metric server keeps everything in memory, so no reason to put it in etcd, right? So
yeah, that's what I was. Yeah,
that's.
I don't see how you could not have something persistent with packages, though. Right? Like, I could see certain things being pulled down from the internet, but not everything, right?
This is actually an interesting thing that we've done here is we have a very clear separation between the metadata, right? The package CR and the package metadata versus what actually instantiates the packages, right? And I mean, it's not, nothing mind-blowing here, but the point here is that the metadata really is, you could blow it away and then you can re-download it and it's the same metadata, right? In theory, right? And so at least on the metadata side, there's really nothing to store except like, what do you actually want to download, right? Where is that coming from? On the instantiation side, we do obviously need to store state, right? So for example, PackageInstall and APIServer, right, are persisted entries in etcd because, they represent an actual thing, right, that you want on your cluster.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So then I didn't really know this. This is real interesting. So a lot of these API objects that we look at when we manage packages are actually being flowed through Kapp Controller's custom API server extension that you've written when you spin it up. So when you run Kapp Controller, you got some. Okay, cool.
Here's actually maybe a future cool idea is that, maybe for some clusters, the discovery of packages is actually not that interesting. And so you could even imagine having these APIs be, disabled, for example, right? If you don't want the discovery APIs to be exposed. And because of this split between the instantiation versus the metadata, right? In theory, one could say, okay, well, these APIs just are not enabled, so not something that anybody should worry about. But that's a hypothetical use case that maybe nobody ever will ever be interested in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. So when I look at, we're running out of time here, but if I was to go and I was to look at, if I was to look at our, so in Tanzu, we have this add-ons controller manager, we have a capabilities controller manager, we have a feature gates. And at some point, I think we should talk about whether there's some weird meta space where things that are evolving in the Carvel ecosystem are doing some or all of the things that we're doing here. I've been curious about that, but I haven't dug enough into these things to really figure that out yet. I think for the most part, this is specific to the apps we have as opposed to like generic stuff.
Yeah, I can maybe say that, at least from my understanding, the reason why there's a need for something like Tanzu Addons is you do have that, you do have to have that glue between a cluster definition indicating like here's a package version X that need to be refed with a particular Kubernetes version, and that's what it means to create a cluster, right? To install a particular cluster, right? And so that's really a layer above of package installs, right? Because it's effectively responsible for saying which package install you want to create, right? And so I would imagine that that piece of functionality would not be, it's pretty Tanzu cluster management specific, right? For the other two, I don't know, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, it does have a lot of Tanzu specific logic in it. Like when we started out, we were looking at that stuff with the upgrades and all that stuff, and like that's a lot of the glue that you have when you're managing like a Kubernetes distribution. You've got a lot of stuff that is just that you can't make more generic unless you just want to waste a tremendous amount of time making useless abstractions. So, which actually is something that most programmers like to do, including me. So, like, maybe it's not such a bad idea. I don't know. But, like, okay. So, if I go through here, we've got about Arun is here. Arun says, I can say that it is a use case turning off API discovery. Turning off API discovery, he's saying.
Is it turning off the Kubernetes API discovery or being able to turn off certain APIs from Kubernetes cluster? Because I think API discovery, if we're talking about the same thing, that's a little more core to Kubernetes. I imagine there isn't really, well, I don't know. I guess I was more specifically talking about, well, if you're trying to, I don't know, trim up your cluster in terms of what it's actually offering, because maybe there's no need for you to discover packages, right, or something like that, right? Maybe you know exactly what you're doing, right? Like exact versions, etc. Then you would be able to, to get rid of it. But yeah, drop by Carvel channel would be interesting to hear more.
Come hang out in Carvel. I want to make sure I noted everybody who. Okay, I think everybody. Lubron, you can do better than Reed's config for me. You win a T-shirt. Everybody wins a T-shirt. Vivek and a meme, I think. Oh, and Zach. So we got 5 T-shirts out in the mail today. Okay. We'll do trivia again next time. Scott, if you had just, if you had, the easy one to mention is makes a call to the API server and finds out what its node's IP address is. That's kind of an interesting one. Okay, but anyways, Scott, next time you can, maybe you can win a T-shirt. So here's the people who won T-shirts. So y'all reach out to me on Slack and make sure I send you a T-shirt. Of course, most of you I see every day. So, so what's going on in these logs? I mean, we've got like 5 minutes left. And then, so why don't you tell us what's going on here? So I'm in a TKG cluster, and I was thinking maybe I could wreak some havoc in here. Maybe it would be more interesting if I did that, right?
I'll tell you one thing is I rarely look at the Kapp Controller logs. I don't find them that exciting. However, what I do find exciting is looking at the status of the app CR.
Okay, cool. Let's look at that. kubectl, edit, app. Let's look at the vSphere CSI. This is not a version of Tanzu that's released yet, so we may very well have a unhappy status here.
So similar to the spec portion of the app CR, there is almost a mirrored structure in the status where there's a deploy section, then there's a fetch section, and there's a template section. And so especially when app CR for the first time runs, where it's creating all the resources. Right?
Cool. So I could see which of those spec parts were failed if I'm deploying an app. I didn't think about that.
That's right. Well, actually, I don't want to tease people too much, but we are working on a Kapp Controller CLI, which hopefully will make this a little bit easier to digest versus flipping through.
You're gonna make Kapp Cuddle? Are you gonna call it Kapp Cuddle?
The naming is a little interesting, right? Because we do have a Kapp CLI versus this one is a Kapp Controller CLI. So I think right now the front runner is KCTRL, but you never know who's the naming. Kapp CTL. Yeah, never know. But so you can actually see in this, actually what you're showing right now on the screen, it says inspect. It's actually using Kapp inspect, because Kapp Controller uses Kapp heavily, so it's using Kapp inspect and showing you what is part of this application that's been deployed.
You're saying it's using Kapp inspect. You're saying Kapp the. Can I
the
peruse?
CLI? Yeah.
I can pull that down really quick, right? Like,
if you wanna, you tell me you don't have a Kapp CLI on your computer. I feel a little offended.
I'm in a bastion over here. I've got a regular job that I have to do, and I'm in the ephemeral. Let's see if it works. All right, let's put it on the bastion.
Here's a little thing that I found out, I don't know, some time ago, but threw me off a little bit, is that Homebrew actually works for Linux as well.
No way.
Yep.
Really?
Did you run what was the previous command that you ran? I didn't catch it.
I thought I just. Did I get it?
What's
I don't know what I
inside?
did.
Nope.
I don't know what I did. I tried to wget it and I didn't do anything at all. There we go. System wide wget. Oh, no check. No check.
That's interesting. Looks like, oh yeah, I guess your VM doesn't have the latest CA certificates.
VM's going to be gone in a second.
You gotta redirect that to the install sh. I don't think you actually redirected it.
I just curl dash k. Okay, so I'm installing the client side tooling here. There we go.
I think it also outputted it to, yeah, there you go. Okay. Yep. There it goes.
Why would I not be using bash? I'm in bash.
Just do /dmsh maybe. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
We gotta maybe cannot move. Oh, you might have to, yeah.
Did it happen? No, it didn't.
Permission denied.
What? Why wouldn't it let me?
I don't know. All it's doing is it's maybe try rm.file real quick.
Oh, it's a slash. I need to give it a destination directory.
No, not necessarily. It defaults. Yeah, it defaults. Try doing rm tempo itt.
Okay.
And then rerun that script with a sudo. Yeah. Yeah, I think when you run it without sudo, it already created things, and I guess for whatever reason permissions didn't. I don't know.
Okay, we got it installed. We're gonna have to look at this next time because we're out of time. But this looks like it basically is working. So I didn't know I could just wget install all the things on Linux. So we're gonna have to put this on our internal CI system. So you want to come back in a few weeks and like do another session, because I feel like we tapped into a bunch of stuff, and I see there's six people still here hanging out, which is pretty good.
Oh, there you go. So real quick,
yeah.
Do Kapp ls-a.
Cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
So if you notice here, they match to what the APIServers are, because the APIServer internally just does Kapp deploy. So it's layer after layer. You can, all the same things that you may be doing directly, they're just being done by the higher levels, higher layers in this abstraction tree.
Yeah, so I can do Kapp ls, and then this will. So what happens when I do this? It goes to the APIServer extension, and it does what? What's the first API call it does? It makes a call to.
This is actually all it's doing is listing. So Kapp deploy is very minimal. It doesn't really have any server-side requirements except being able to write a config map.
Yeah.
So all it's doing is listing config maps over here. And if you do Kapp inspect -a on one of them, you'll see that it will actually try to find individual resources associated with that. So lowercase a, and then give it a name of one of from the above list, and then throw in -n tkg system.
So it's just probably reading annotations the objects, right? It's scanning it for.
Right. So the core principle to Kapp deploy is that it's actually using Kubernetes label that it generated uniquely for that app, and all the resources that it's managing for that app is just using that unique label.
So if I kubectl edit that Antrea agent here, then I'll see the Kapp metadata on there.
That's right. Yep.
Session kube system. So if I jump in here, I could see all the Kapp stuff. Yeah. So then I could see that the Kapp has labeled this, and that's how it can associate it with an app and manage the state of it and all that.
That's right. Yep. So yeah, Kapp tries to be as stateless as possible. The only state that it saves is really that generated label, nothing else.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're out of time, and Dimitri, this is really cool. I think we got to do this again sometime and go one level deeper. But I think this has really clarified a lot of things for a lot of people that are here, especially running Tanzu and running Antrea on Tanzu and trying to understand how it's managed.
Happy to join in and just discuss random things. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll see you again in a little bit. All right. Thanks everybody for coming and hanging out. Definitely. Thanks, Scott, for coming to hang out. You got to do a show with us sometimes and show us your 1,000 files of YTT that you use. You got to see Scott's collection of custom Carvel recipes. Okay. All right. We'll see you all in a little bit. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. Thanks
for having me.
Thanks so much, Dimitri. This is so cool. Yeah.
Bye-bye. Have a good long holiday and happy Thanksgiving. Yep.
I'm thankful for modular tools this Thanksgiving. Okay. See you guys.
Well, bye-bye.